we have a builder friend of ours that has just run into an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
So have you done your research on your lot ahead of time? A lot of people just think, oh, this lot is buildable.
Yeah.
But one of the big things is, have you searched a lot through these different associations or organizations to see historically, has something happened there? And even more recent, is there some sort of bird there or creature there that you can't remove? Welcome back to the Building Brews and Barbecue podcast. We're just sitting here having some fun today, having a good laugh, and then they're rolling. But we're now here at our next episode in our series, The House That Wisdom Built. I'm Vince Longo, one of your co-hosts, and this is
Nathan Walters.
And we're here to take you through home building or renovating from start to finish. In this episode, we just finished up the episode about Demo Day.
That's right.
Which everybody loves. And now we're jumping in to something more closely related to new construction. But there is, if you're renovating, there are some things you need to pay attention to in regards to site work.
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit, but this episode's all about grading and foundations, which is after that pesky old house is gone and after you have that meeting with the silt fence up and stuff like that, and the city or county gives you the thumbs up to start construction, the bulldozers start rolling.
That's right.
That hum, and here we go.
Yep.
We're off to the races. Nathan, in Oklahoma, you get what type of equipment are they using? And tell us a little bit about the topography in Oklahoma. What are you dealing with out there?
Generally flat, but where we build east of 35, we have way more topo. So way more topography, but nothing like Atlanta. I mean, probably half of what Atlanta's like. What's interesting is I have built for so long on larger acreage lots. And so we haven't had as many like drainage reports and things like that to deal with because, we have 2-acre lots and getting the water to move on 2 acres is, the city assumes we're going to do our job right.
Yeah.
But what we're doing out there is we are track hose, we are dozers, dump trucks.
Gotcha.
That's what we're using.
The big three.
The big three. We're doing the big three. And then if we're on anything that's soft, or that we did a lot of fill, sheep's foot. So
Gotcha.
We'll come out and we'll compact it down. But we have so much red clay.
So wait, you said sheep's foot. So is it a lot of sheep? Are they certain weight?
Yeah,
Where do you get the sheep? A local farmer?
We get them from a local farm. We have about 100 of them, and they come in. They just kind of tamp everything down for us.
Is that like goat yoga?
Yeah, same thing.
But you use sheep to compact soil.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I like this. Building sounds fun to build in. No, what is it? A sheep's foot? Explain that since you said it.
Sheep's foot, in essence, is a compactor, right?
Okay.
We're compacting the ground if we have a soft soil or we need to meet certain requirements.
So that's that machine that has the tires on the back, but on the front looks like a big hair roller.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So my wife kind of sheep's foot her hair.
I'm gonna tell her you said that. I'm gonna tell her that's coming out.
Yeah. I guess that would be for a big person.
Excuse me.
With a big head. So anyway, let's get back.
That's what we do. But we're getting into some of our tighter lot stuff in our developments that with the topo of it and how tight we are, we're having to have the lots. We're actually cutting the lots as we're developing and cutting them in to meet the certain benchmarks. And so we're getting way more into, you're right, drainage of these lots. Definitely the tighter you build is so important.
Yeah. And so, what is step one when it comes to this? Day one, we're cutting trees, right?
Yeah.
So I know in Oklahoma, the trees don't get very tall, 30 feet because of all the wind.
Yeah, all the wind.
Right. In Atlanta, we get massive trees.
Yeah.
And something that's interesting that I try to level set a homeowner, if you're building a home and you're running your own project or you're a builder or a homeowner, I always say, listen, that's a big cost to get rid of trees. And here's the thing, right? If you have a subdivision like you do with lots, you can get in there in a 30-foot tall tree and you can just push the trees over with the bulldozer
That's right.
or the backhoe. You dig the back of it and push them over. pretty safe. They're not gonna twist on you or
That's right.
rotate and come down where they don't want.
Yeah.
That's a big thing in Atlanta. One of the big things I tell people to be cognizant of is, listen, if you have a dead tree on your lot, even if you have the space to push it over with a bulldozer, they won't, because dead trees, a live tree, as it starts to go, will continue to go. Dead trees have a tendency to whip back, and when they do, they snap. And I've seen more bulldozer windshields, people get hurt
Yeah.
from bulldozers that try to go too fast or take down a dead tree.
Yeah.
They're the widow maker, believe it or not.
I thought that was a heart attack.
No, that's, oh well, yeah, I guess that too.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's the widow maker in terms of building.
Yeah.
Is getting rid of dead trees,
Dead
whether the
trees.
people are climbing them, trying to cut them. You get a crew that's out there climbing a dead tree, you need to go call your insurance company. 'Cause- or, like, walk away, get in your truck, drive away, pretend
drive
like
away
you were
real
never there.
fast.
You don't know them, because that's what they call the widowmaker. Same thing with a bulldozer. You're a little more protected, right?
Yeah.
But it destroys windshields and stuff like that all the time on bulldozers. And so our big thing is in Atlanta, when we do in these infill lots, is you can't just go in and save money, because you save a lot of money when you can just push the tree down with a bulldozer and you have a guy at $80 an hour, $70 an hour cutting it up. And then the bulldozer crunches it up and you just
Puts it
put
in
it
the
in the
dump truck.
dumpster or in the dump truck, and away it goes. When you have a tight lot, those trees have to be limbed down
Oh, yeah.
and taken down from the top, which you go from a bulldozer pushing it over in 10 minutes to 3 hours with a professional saw cut guy 60 feet up, 70 feet up, taking it limb by limb and lowering it down. And so I try to level set customers that, hey, clearing a lot and doing the grading on a lot that's in town tight is going to cost far more than a big open lot where you can just have the legs to move.
Yeah.
And like what you were alluding to, it really goes to the point of, hey, when it's a tight lot, you got to really pay attention to drainage. And going back to like what we talked about earlier in previous episodes and pre-planning, not only are we pre-planning your house, and I don't think we touched on that, did we? We're not only pre-planning your house in pre-construction, but we're also looking at the lot and trying to gauge, how are we going to handle water?
Right.
How do the local municipalities make us capture all the water off the roof and put it in retention areas, ponds, or, cisterns underground to let it over time seep back into the ground those are all things that need to be taken into consideration. And, we're not just talking about your foundation and things like that. We got to start right from square one. So you said managing topography and water flow is huge. I'd say that number one. Let's talk a little bit how slope lots are different than flat lots. And how does that impact cost and planning for you?
So for us, it's pretty drastic, because on a flat lot, we have some guys that do, I'm going to say some words and I can give an explanation on them, but we have some guys that do monolithic slabs, pouring them at once. We have some guys that do post tension, with the rebar. I would say a ton of our community does what we call traditional footings and stems, right, to do our foundation. Anything on a flat lot or anything with, a few feet of fall, 4, 5, 6 feet of fall, we can, do the dirt work, make it up with dirt work, or do double stack stems. That's pretty standard for how we build. Where it can become substantial for us, you get into something 10, 12, 14 foot of fall, we start getting into walkout basement territory. Okay, well, it's funny because when I come to Atlanta and I talk with you, you're like, yeah, we're putting in a foundation. We go out, look at the site. Well, you're putting in a basement, right? But that's just a foundation out here. For us, it's a whole different trade. My foundation guy does not do basements. I have to call a guy who does the basements himself. So you get some fall, and it's pretty substantial, because in our market, you cannot financially have an unfinished basement. It's too expensive. For you to use if you're going to have to build a basement, you better put something in it. You better put footage and part of the house in it to be able to absorb some of that
Interesting.
cost.
Is that just the straight cost, or do you feel like because you're one of the few that are doing basement style foundations in your area of Oklahoma, Edmond, do you feel like because it's not commonplace there, you're having to pay more, or is it just because it's that much more than a stem wall and slab or slab or.
I'm assuming it's more. But also, I think, what do you guys have out here? You probably have 10 foundation guys that do that. So on our basement side, we have one.
Okay, so they dictate the price a little bit.
He dictates the price. Do I think that he's out just like killing it and making a ton of money? No, I think he's actually a pretty fair guy, but I think that due to the fact that he's the only one, there's no competition. Competition always kind of level sets pricing, and there is no competition. You call one guy and you wait in line. It's like, hey, we're ready to go. No, I'm 3 months behind. Nothing you can do.
Do
besides
you-
wait for 3 months?
Do you have to, for that guy, because he's just one, and does he have a handle on it, and has he done so many that it's kind of commonplace for him, or do you have to provide him with engineering?
He's an engineer.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Okay,
he was.
so he's
he was
all
a,
in one.
He was a.
We don't have that here.
He was a nuclear engineer, but his parents were in construction. So when he got out of doing that, he got into building basements. Oh yeah, literally, I send my set of plans to him. He does all the engineering on the basement, does all the shear wall engineering on the framing, and builds the basement.
That's crazy. No, I don't mean that he does all that, but that he was a nuclear engineer and he decided to get into
Construction.
Bless his heart.
Guy.
As we say in the South, bless his heart. Yeah. No, yeah, you're here in Atlanta. I would say, and I'm going to ask you this question, but I would say because of our topography, which is the lay of the land,
Yep.
is so hilly.
Oh,
People always think, oh, Atlanta's flat, right?
No.
No, when you get about an hour south of Atlanta or even less, you might get 45 minutes south of Atlanta, and then it's flat the rest of the state pretty much. But Atlanta is in the foothills of the Appalachians, and it is so hilly. We've done them before where we're putting in a 24-foot tall foundation. And so I would say at least 80% of our builds are going to be on a 10-foot or more foundation wall. So that's normal for us. But what's your percentage out there in Oklahoma?
So if you took the whole state, 5%. But when you talk about being in Edmond, anything east of I-35, 40% of the lots can end up being basement lots. We have way more topo, way more topography out there. But no, I still remember coming out here in 2016 and not understanding your driveways. Like I was the same. I was like, oh, I'm going to Atlanta. And then we drove through and I was like, dude, if I had to build driveways, because Oklahoma is so primarily flat, if I did driveways like this, no one would buy our houses.
Yeah.
Like the one we went to today, this morning, that you're remodeling, I said, zero chance a customer of mine would buy a house like this.
Yeah, that thing goes up probably almost not quite a 45-degree angle, but it's at a 30% angle.
Yeah, and goes up, and I'm like, no one would buy that house in Oklahoma. That house is bought. Not only did they buy it, they're remodeling it, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, and and I think that because of the topography, that's why we talked a lot before in previous episode about the power team.
Oh yeah,
and how the landscape architect, it's so important, and that's why. And if we did touch back on that, that's the importance of having that team in place. You go out there and just start grading and thinking about a foundation without working through those details before with that architect or that civil engineer. Because civil works on the site. Right. You're in for a whole lot of costs you never knew, and you could really mess it up because what's the biggest enemy of any home? Water, right?
Water.
So
Always
you have to have a spectacular plan in place to handle water flow, and you need to do that in pre-planning.
Oh yeah.
And so one of the big things is, do you do that out there where you're handling maybe dry creeks or swales, which are directing? Are you having to really direct water, or do you have enough space out there to?
So it's wild to me. It's funny learning all this pre-planning and doing all this. I've learned it in two ways. Like in Oklahoma, it's still pretty much the Wild West in a lot of places. Not all of them. We have certain municipalities that are, hey, you require drainage plans, right? Hey, no, we need a drainage plan. So much of Oklahoma has allowed the builder to do whatever in essence. And what a builder does is going to make water go downhill because water goes downhill. Well, that doesn't help the person below that person.
Ooh,
And then below,
point.
and all you're doing is causing issues with water running onto the neighbor's lot or things like that because they've just allowed it to be open to the builder. And you're right, like these are issues that are crazy because the way I was raised in this industry is, oh, you just get out there as a builder and you grade it and you do it. And you're right, the amount of stuff you come across being around you and being around markets in the Builder 20 where I'm like, wow, if you did a little pre-planning, this would solve a lot of issues, to also the development side that we do. We have so many on the development side in Oklahoma is where drainage is huge. There's an entire department. They're making sure that the neighborhood drains. They're making sure of all these things, but I'm not usually for city municipalities stepping in, just like we're talking about on the trees. But in Oklahoma, we have to go through all these hoops on the development side. But then we're like, all right, builder, just
Good luck.
do what you want with the water.
And you're really leaving, builders are good at building. I've not met a ton of builders. I mean, listen, I've met some builders that's all they know how to do. There's been some times when I've interviewed potential site supers, and you figure site means everything, right?
Yeah.
No, they've come to me and said, "Hey, I know how to build the house. Can you just get it to the foundation and I'll take it from framing up?" Because I'm shocked because a lot of the national builders, and they do it that way. They have a specialized team that's all they do is focus, because that's how important it is.
It is.
All they do is focus on site and foundation. And I was shocked when I was like, what do you mean? And so you've hit the nail on the head. Most builders that have small businesses, they don't have the skills to do everything.
That's
It's
right.
very rare that you find a builder that can do everything like us.
Which
You
is
know?
which is why though we talk about it, and it does go back to the power team. Look, that's the way Oklahoma's market is and the way we want it to be too. Hey, come to us. We do everything. We do everything. And it's like, we don't though. We have a power team. It's why we ask you, hey, have a landscape architect involved. Let's have an interior designer involved. Let's have an architect. Because then you work these things together and make a plan, like you said at the beginning, rather than, well, oh no, like we kind of started and we might need to do a retaining wall over here, or no, if we know, then we can cut the retaining wall in appropriately when we need to, things of that nature. But it's getting definitely in the neighborhood that we have coming up. We're going to be very tight lots and drainage is going to be huge. It's going to be completely different for us the way we build compared to the way I've built the last 15 years. The last 15 years, like I said, our smallest lots are half acre and then go up to 2 acres. No one really says, hey, just make sure water doesn't come into the house. Okay. And you get out there and you drain, and we're able to get the water to run off, and we have lasers on the final grade and things as we have so much room. That's kind of how it's always been built. But as we're transitioning into this tighter neighborhood, it's like, oh, we need all this like before we ever break ground.
That's right.
Where the downspouts coming, where are we tying into the downspouts and moving that water? Is it going behind the house? Is it going to the street to then roll into the neighborhood retention? How are we tying this all together?
That's right. And you just raised a great point, because you don't have, do you have clay out there?
Clay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Georgia, we have Georgia clay, baby, red clay.
Yep.
And it does not absorb. It becomes slick. When we have a good rainstorm, oh, by the way, for those of you building in the South, when you get a good, and not in Florida where it turns to sand, it absorbs. When you get a good rainstorm on clay, you're pretty much shut down for site work for the next 2 to 3 days.
Oh yeah.
Hoping it dries, because even bulldozers will just sit there and spin.
We calculate 3 days. Well, when you're on site work, hey, you get rain, it's shut down for 3 days. We
that's
lose
a good tip.
3 days in Oklahoma every time it rains if we're doing site work.
That's right. And so to that, it's because all that water sits on the surface. It doesn't absorb down through, and most all of that runs off. So yeah, I get frustrated because of the amount of cost of retaining drainage. And I want to talk a little bit, because you're so used to doing neighborhoods where I don't. You have to plan and capture, especially in a tight neighborhood, all of that runoff water has to be directed to like the street or other areas that are downhill that will capture the water and then send it to a centrally located spot called the detention pond.
Yeah, or retention.
Pond. And we can get into the difference of those. because there is slight difference
There is slight
between
difference.
them.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention what that is, or do you want to just keep rolling?
I'm gonna keep rolling.
Okay, so
That's more developing, but
yeah,
than
this
home
is.
building. Yeah.
You can DM us if you want to learn more about the
If you want to know
differences,
more, let us know.
or just Google it. But so, um, but like what we deal with here on our one-off lots. So if you're in a new subdivision, the great thing is your developer probably had to account for that water runoff.
Correct.
And so if you're building a house and it's a tear down rebuild, or you're in an old subdivision, there's no retention
That's right.
for it. And so now you have to retain that, so you're not pouring all that water on your neighbor.
Yep.
It's not fun that, because we see it before we get our retention
Mhm.
systems in, that you got to really be careful of how you swale stuff and direct water
Mhm.
when you don't have grass in place,
Yep.
things like that. That, yes, you have to put what's called silt fence. It's that black fence that goes around the lot in areas where not on the high side, you have to put it around the whole lot,
Yeah.
at least one layer. And the city or county and your civil engineer and planning will dictate, is it there's different levels. Is it A, B, C, or D?
Yeah.
Is it wire backed?
It's a wire backed.
Or is it, do you have metal stakes, or can you get away with the wood stakes? Each one comes with a different price
Oh, yeah.
tag, per lineal foot installed. It can range anywhere from $3 to $7.
Mhm.
And then on the downhill side, where water is heading, you might have to do
Layers.
double layers or triple layers, or layers of straw bales staked in the
Yeah.
ground before, to stop that silt from leaving sites. Because I've seen horror stories. I remember one time I pulled up, it wasn't our subdivision, but a buddy of mine that does silt fence protection says, "You've got to come see this." I pulled up, and they were building a brand new house, didn't have their measures in place. The supervisor wasn't watching it. There was not a, once in 100 year, but it was a major rain event, and they were backfilling, and all of that mud was on the downhill neighbor's driveway in front of their house. It had mud that was at least 8 to 10 inches deep across the whole front, to the point where they could not even get out of their garage with their cars.
Because it was so thick.
It was so thick. That's why, hey, you have got to have a good plan, because you're really affecting your neighbors. And yes, it's going to cost thousands of dollars to put it in place. And you don't see that. It's not like a countertop where you see what you got for your money.
Yep.
But you did, because you're affecting your downstream neighbors. And so in Atlanta, what we have to do individual retention.
Mhm.
So every one of our hard surfaces, roof, driveway, patios, pools, you wouldn't think that's a hard surface because it's retained,
Right.
it holds water.
Right.
But you have to account for that entire surface as hard surface.
Yeah.
And you have to capture that. And what is that? Well, it could be big tanks that are underground.
Yeah.
It could be a ton of stone with pipes running into it that is wrapped in fabric, and it's below grade. And it takes all those surfaces. Gutters are piped in PVC pipe to those things, with clean outs, so you can keep them clean. And you have to sign maintenance agreements and send them to the city that shows that you're going to maintain your water. And they'll come and check. They're getting to a point where they're checking on these to make sure the homeowners are maintaining these underground systems, which is not easy, because you don't maintain it. You get leaves in there.
Yeah.
You're going to ruin the system that you just paid. Oh, what? We budget on an average house to pipe everything, get the gutter collectors with the leaf filters, which are really nice, but they're obscene to look at. They're really bulky.
Yeah.
Between that, the piping, the labor to install it, the field system to hold this water, you got to hold 110% of the water that would have originally come off the lot without the house there. That's running somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000, depending on the size of the covered areas. That's the addition to the cost of the house. And that's something that if a homeowner doesn't realize that, or you don't do the pre-planning up front, that's the I gotcha number. That's the, oh, sorry, we're doing a cost plus agreement. The city's making us do it. Buck up, camper.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing that on individual houses out there? No. See,
No.
that's
No, not yet. But we're when it comes to codes, we're probably 10 years behind y'all. Usually we're not seeing that. The developments are seeing that. Us as the developer side are seeing a lot of focus on drainage, and I mean a lot. And I think it's been that way Because with the stories I've heard before I was ever in Edmond, 70s and 80s, they did not have focus on that. And when you would get a 100-year rain or a 500-year rain, houses were flooding and septic systems were floating,
Oh, wow.
right? Because of the way it was. So they have ended up made it very difficult, not difficult, and it's in a good way on the development side of water and all of the things I've learned about water and like how you're talking about, oh, we got to capture 110% of the water coming off. All of the percentages I've learned about water and drainage have been through the development side. We're still in a place on the builder side. Hey, yeah, I mean, we still have houses inside of neighborhoods that don't do full wraps of gutter. We just have gutter on, there's just gutter on over the front door and over the AC units. And in really nice neighborhoods, that's still going on. So where's all their water going?
Wow.
So onto the neighbor, onto things like that. Yeah. So there's still some of that going on because they put that onus on the builder, and they're assuming that the development, how we have developed it, is going to capture the majority of the water.
Yeah. Do you, in your pre-planning, pre-construction, do you ever send soil engineers out to test the soil and the compaction, meaning how strong the soil is? Will it hold a foundation?
So again, we do that the entire way through the development. We're testing our soil where our roads are. When we bring usually out, again, not technically required, but we do it on lots that we have a lot of fill. So when we do a cut and fill, if we end up with a pretty decent amount of fill, we will bring somebody out and we will test the soil per the engineer's standards. Generally, if we're all on cut, man, to be honest with you, there's houses that we're doing that we're jackhammering footings.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we hit so much rock.
Rock.
Or clay that we can only get 18 inches with a track hoe, and we need to get 24 inches deep. And we're jackhammering those last 6 inches.
Yeah, and that's one of the big takeaways that we have in pre-construction that I feel like a lot of contractors don't really prep their customers enough on. And this is huge. We level set them that, hey, you could really incur a heavy duty cost if you don't understand exactly what type of soils we're dealing with on your site. Because like you said, you may have an area where there's rock. Then you go across the street and all of a sudden that's perfect.
Yeah.
There's no rock. And then you go down the road and, oh, that's sandy soil that you don't get the compaction rate that you need to be able to build on.
Yeah.
And so it's all over the board, and we don't have a crystal ball. It's impossible to have a crystal ball. Yeah. So we try to make sure that our customers, or if you're building a house or planning on it, you need to know ahead of time, do you want to take the $2,500 risk? You know, and that's what we call, I don't say that, a risk. It's not really a risk, but do you want to spend $2,500 to have a soil engineer go out there and test the soil so you know ahead of time, hey, we're going to need a breaker, a backhoe with a breaker, or we need a blast, which is extreme, and then it affects your neighbors a whole nother way. That's a whole nother episode
on a couple of houses.
Yeah, exactly. And you take on the insurance of all your neighbors too, by the way. You know, every little thing that's ever been wrong with their house in history is now your fault.
It's not your fault.
So, and it's hard to disprove that unless you document everything. That's a whole nother, we could talk about that for hours. But more importantly, I always tell the customers, listen, you can spend the $2,500, but if you already own the lot and we're going to build this house anyways, I always say, do you plan, if we hit rock, do you want to turn this into a slab house? Or do you really want that basement?
Yeah.
I want the basement. Okay, then don't spend the $2,500, but no, you need a contingency in place that, hey, we hit loose soils, we have to do something called a helical pier, where it's metal pipes, and they have a mini backhoe that has basically a giant drill on the back of it, and it just drills this plate with a screw drill head in this pipe into the ground, 10-foot section at a time, until it hits a minimum KIPS rating, which is that pressure, that compaction pressure on the head of that drill bit that says, okay, it's 25 KIPS is typically what I see as a minimum. Once we hit that, you can go to 30 to have even more. You know, they're trying to get down to that solid soil, and then they put a cap on the top of it with a bolt, and that's what we tie our footings to.
I know you had a house around here that I had never seen that done before. How many was in that one house?
So we've done it before where, believe it or not, we have gone down. Oh, one was, it averaged, we did about 55 helical piers in the foundation. Each one was somewhere between 75 feet and 110 feet down.
And you're paying per foot, I assume.
And you pay per foot, like $20 a foot. So if you run the numbers on that, it can get really expensive quick, but what can you do? And in that case, it didn't matter if you were pouring a slab or a foundation.
Didn't matter.
If you have loose soils, you're paying.
Yeah.
But if you have solid soils, you can actually just do your slab on the rock and you're good to go, baby. That's awesome. But if you want a foundation, then you got to take it out with a chipping hammer or blast and pull out the rock. So, soils can really cost, and that's one of those unknowns. And if you're thinking about building, you need to be cognizant that you're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, that is what I would say in construction. With all the pre-work, with all the pre-construction, with all the episodes we did before, that's still one, no matter your builder, crazy things can happen. And most builders, and if they don't have it, I don't know, but do not be surprised, customer, if you see in a contract that what we call rock clauses or loose soil clauses, dirt clauses, basically saying, hey, what we hit, don't hit, what we need to do to put your foundation in is on the owner, not the builder. And that's going to be in most contracts. And I guess if it's not, it's your lucky day. But I would say the majority of any builder I've talked to, that's in there because that's just an unknown that it's not your builder's fault. It's not anyone's fault. And like you said, it's just that lot.
Yeah.
Because the lot next door, no problem.
That's right. Yeah. And funny to that point is you're exactly right. I would say most contractors have that clause, that rock clause or underground clause, site clause in their contract. So check your contracts, but that's also why we try to mediate that because it's in our contracts. Because we're not crystal ball, but we're giving you the option ahead of time to do a soil test. So we're trying to help, but you're exactly right. Buyer beware.
Yeah.
It's on you. And same with building permits. I know we did building permits in the past. If you got an issue with your land and you can't get a building permit, it's on the owner to fix that.
That's right.
Or we're dealing with now, if there's something that the grades change out there and something needs to change with the retaining wall, hey, if it has to go back to the municipality and there's a change in the permit, that's on the homeowner because it's their lot. Now, if it's our lot, it's on us if we're building to sell.
Yeah.
But that's just, again, just normal commonplace in building. One of the other things I was going to say to that is, it was awesome too.
How awesome.
And now I had it was so awesome.
Was
it was going to be so great.
Was it going to be as good as this fake lemonade you're trying to give me?
Oh, yeah. Or the sun-kissed cherry.
I just want to ask the audience that if you've been following along, if this is not your first time to listen to us, please write in the comment section if I would ever drink this or not.
You should drink it. And we don't get sponsored by Minute Maid, but it sure would be nice.
It sure would be nice if anyone from Minute Maid's listening. I would drink it if I needed to.
That's exactly right. To that point, thanks for the interlude. We have a builder friend of ours that has just run into an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
So have you done your research on your lot ahead of time? A lot of people just think, oh, this lot is buildable.
Yeah.
But one of the big things is, have you searched the lot through these different associations or organizations to see historically, has something happened there? And even more recent, is there some sort of bird there or creature there that you can't remove? I've heard those horror stories, but we've got a buddy of ours today, a builder in our builder group, that there's an argument that where he's trying to develop was in fact an Indian burial ground. And if it is, he's all done.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. We're getting there on the development side on the bird stuff. Like you almost as a guy going to buy land, you want to go buy 80 acres, you better make sure there's not special birds out there, that someone's standing in front of the tree, making sure you don't knock over their nest. Yeah, that's a real thing. As a real thing.
Wow. Yeah. So, trying to wrap up some of the site stuff and moving into the foundation, is there anything else you can think of that our listeners should know about site development, things that they should be focused on. Always, I would say your top three things to I would say the top three things, whether you're a builder or homeowner, is this. When you approach a job site, anytime you go, you need to, one, check and make sure all your silt fence is intact, because that'll get you shut down, number one. The city's always, city inspectors and county inspectors are always out inspecting silt fence. There's a whole division just of those people.
Yeah, and on that, I tell my customers on that all the time. Hey, like you said, thousands of dollars in containment, if you will, thousands in the gravel and the silt fence and fixing the silt fence, because sometimes the lumber trucks can't get in or the concrete trucks cut a corner, so you're fixing it. You're always doing things, a heavy rain. It's a number that you are not excited to spend, but how I explain it to my customers all the time is, hey, I know right now when you're building, you don't like this, but when I'm building the house next door, you're going to want us to do this, which is why we're having you do this. Not only do we have to per city code and things of that nature, but also, hey, I know it doesn't matter to you today because you're not living out here, so tracking mud in the street or whatever may not feel as much of a problem. You're going to live here one day, and I'm going to build the house across the street one day, and you're going to hope that we have silt fence and we have containment and erosion control in place.
Yep. Number one, you step up to a job site or you pull up to your job site, whether you're a builder or a homeowner, make sure the silt fence is in place, not ruined, and intact all the way around, because the city and your neighbors care.
They care.
And they will shut you down.
Yep.
Number two is the gravel on your driveway. What you'll notice at a job site is the gravel on a driveway is what's called number 4. It's a bigger gravel. It's not small that just gets stuck in your tires and gets tracked in the street. And the purpose of that gravel to be in good condition and in place and refreshed over the build cycle is that pulls the dirt and mud off of the tires and limits it getting in the street, thus keeping neighbors happy, which is important, and the municipality happy.
I'm glad you're saying this because we've been having internal arguments on this. One of my site super wants to do crush or run all the time, and I tell it, no, we 3-inch coarse rock is as small as we'll get, usually 4. You're right, we'll go with a 4-inch rock at minimum. The 3 or 4-inch rock is my first base down. Now, what I have done, if it ends up getting really pressed down by lumber trucks and concrete trucks, we will sometimes come over the top of that with a crusher run, which is the small, smooth it out, makes it look real pretty, but you nailed exactly why you use the big rock. Yes, is it hard to walk on? Yes, is it hard to drive on a little bit? The purpose is it picks mud out of your tires, which hopefully keeps it out of the street.
Yep. And number 3 is, do you have coverage on all your exposed dirt areas? Is wheat straw. You can throw pine straw, because the nice thing about using pine straw is as you get towards the end of the build, you can rake that up and reuse it in your landscape. Yeah. But we use wheat straw, which is the tan color straw.
Yeah, we use hay.
Hay, same thing. Hay is wheat straw, and throw down your temporary grassing, your ryegrass that comes up really fast.
Y'all obviously don't cowboy around here. Wheat straw, it's hay.
Hay. When I say hey, people answer. So we put that down.
Yep.
And that's their big 3 when you show up. Now, a bonus points thing is number 4, police the site and pick up the trash.
Oh, yeah.
Because that blows around and keeps the neighbors happy. Don't just walk over it.
Yeah.
Nothing annoys me more than when a subcontractor walks over the top of a piece of trash, or even one of my employees walks past it, see it, pick it up, put it in the dumpster. It will make you, the homeowner, and the neighbors happy. So I'd say that's my top 4 picks for a homeowner or a contractor when you get to that job site of what to do.
Agreed.
And all right, so that's it. I'm going to say for site. Let's move to the different types of foundation. You touched on it a little bit. I'd love for you to expand on it, because people don't know what stem walls are and things like that. So in Oklahoma, explain your foundation types and what they are. You said post-tension. So start with one, work through the next ones, and then I'll talk about the tall wall. And
so I'll talk primarily about what we do, which is what I deem your standard footing and your standard stem walls. So what we do is we send off our plans to an engineer, and we have an engineer that gives us what we call a footing design. And he tells us, because he looks at the house, he looks at the point loads, and he's going to tell us, same thing you talked about, what our soil compaction needs to be. He's going to tell us how deep, how wide our footing needs to be. If we have to put in what we call pre-construction piers, if we have to dig them in and put them in, he's going to tell us how we have to install the rebar. So we're going to run through that. Then he's going to tell us how to tie the stem wall into the footing. So for us, generally speaking, we're going to do a 24-inch wide by 24-inch deep footing, and that is the outline of the house.
Gotcha.
And we're going to take that around the entire outline of the house.
And that's the footing is what has the rebar in
It is.
which is the long runs of metal.
Long runs of metal that are tied together.
Tubular metal, but solid.
Yes.
And number 4 means they're 1/2 inch in diameter.
Yes.
And then number 5 is 3/4. Number 6 is 1 inch.
Yep.
And so I think the standard is like number 4.
I think it's
And
number
is it
4,
like
yeah.
2 or 3 runs in 24 inches?
3?
Yep, that's about right.
Is that what you're
I
using?
think so. Yep. So 3 runs, and then
See, mine on that is I love that you know that. Legitimately, I don't know as much on that because we get it from the engineer.
oh,
and
so
I
it's
hand it-
different maybe.
And it's different,
soils.
and we hand the engineered plan, and we just follow the engineered plan on the footing. But that how much metal we have to use, how we have to tie it
The
together,
size of the walls.
size of the walls, all of that's done through our engineering plans. We follow our engineering plan, so that's our footing, and we pour our footing. We then have some vertical rebar coming out. We come back, we put our forms up for our stem wall. Anywhere from 18 to 22 inches tall is a single stem wall.
So a stem wall is, so you pour your footing first.
Yep.
And then the stem wall basically is a small foundation wall.
That's
or
right.
not a tall foundation
No.
wall. Is that poured or is that blocked?
poured.
Poured.
Ours
Okay.
is poured. Ours
Gotcha.
is poured, so we get forms.
And so you take your rebar and let it stick out of
Stick
the,
out.
And let me ask you, before you jump off of the footing in Oklahoma, I know they required here is, do you run a full 20, because the rebar sticks come in 20-foot lengths. Do you run a full stick and have it come up inside the footing as a grounding rod so your electrician can
We do.
ground the house to it?
We do.
Okay, with that clamp that
We
has to
do.
be visible.
Yeah, it's generally for us, it's always in the garage.
Okay, so
Right.
you run that, and that literally, that piece of steel
Yep.
is a piece of rebar. It goes down into the
Yes.
foundation, into your footing. So
Yes.
if the house, the electrical ever gets struck by lightning,
Yep.
it doesn't blow out the electrical panel.
That's right.
It follows that and goes down and dissipates into
Yes,
the dirt.
correct.
Mm,
Correct. We do that. We have that as well. So we do that. Then we do our stem wall. Like I said, forms, horizontal rebar running inside of the stem wall as well, tied to the vertical
Vertical and horizontal.
and
Yep.
horizontal inside of our stem walls that we're running around. We pour the stem walls. This is a very important thing. That in Oklahoma is the foundation. I like to give that to everybody, because then after we do the stem wall, we strip the forms, we come in and we're going to do your plumbing and your ground heat and air. Then we're going to fill it with sand, visqueen for a moisture barrier, pour a slab. Okay, now inside of our slabs, we do have interior footings that we put rebar in as well for point loads coming down on the roof. But what I like to explain to our customers about our slabs, your slab is not your foundation. Your slab is a subfloor. So we get
Oh,
people,
it's a subfloor.
it's in essence a subfloor.
Right.
So what we like to explain to our customers is, hey, it's Oklahoma. Concrete's going to do 2 things. It's going to get hard. It's going to crack. Actually, it's 3 things. It's going to get hard. It's going to crack, and no one's going to steal it. So that's what's going to happen with concrete. But we'll get some shrinkage sometimes, and you'll get cracks. You'll get some cracks in the slab, and we'll get customers that will say, my foundation's cracking. We're always teaching them, no, your foundation is your footing and your stem. Your slab is just a place for us to put floor down on, except for the interior footings that we're bringing point loads down onto. But for the most part, hey, this is what I'm sticking wood floor to. This is what I'm sticking tile to.
Yeah.
More than
Yeah.
anything structural.
Interesting.
Structures on the outside.
Gotcha. So you call that's a footing. What do you call that foundation when it's a footing? Your stem wall, which is the vertical
Yep.
wall, and then your slab on top. And I think when you do the vertical foundation wall, you let the rebar go long and bend that into
Bend it
your
in.
slab
We
and
bend-
tie all that
we-
steel together.
We bend it in, and then we also we'll do 4x4 grids of rebar in the slab. So so like I said, plumbing, heat and air go in, then you fill it with sand. Okay. And then we then get the little stands that we will then put rebar in and put them on a 4x4
4
by
foot
4
by
foot
4 foot.
grid.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And you compact the sand?
We do. We
Okay.
tamp it.
Okay, to get it to
We
a
do.
certain
Yep.
pressure?
Yep.
Gotcha. And what do you call that foundation in total? That's would you call it a stem wall?
Yeah, I call it a traditional footing and stem. I don't know what
Footing
that.
and
I'm
stem.
sure there's
Okay.
an actual word to it, but it is not monolithic. It's not a post tension. It's not one of those. It is footing and stem. And I would say that in Oklahoma, that's how 90% of the houses are built. And then you do have a few monolithics and you do have a few post tension slabs.
Explain the monolithic.
So the monolithic, the only time we see a lot of monolithic some home builders do it, but I would say our monolithic slabs are done more commercially. Then they're done.
That's when you have a totally flat lot.
Totally flat.
Totally flat.
Yep.
And you might have some areas where if you do have a variation, it might be a foot.
That's right.
Foot and a half.
That's right. Which is why you see it done a lot done commercially, because it's funny, residentially, we're behind a lot of the codes you guys follow, but you guys, it's funny how you build residentially is how we build commercially. All the site planning, all the drainage, all of that is how we have to build commercially. So that's how we're able to do monolithic slabs on the commercial side, because we have these drainage reports, benchmarks we have to meet, all of this stuff. So usually we end up with flat dirt work that you're able to actually do.
Mass graded almost.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and then you're able to kind of, monolithic is one pour. So we're pouring your foundation and your slab as one.
Same rebar, same depth. So on your perimeter, wherever the point loads are, meaning walls that support your floors and roof, whether it's inside the slab or on the perimeter, the monolithic means that kind of becomes a footing as well. So it goes really deep to like 24 by 12 or whatever.
Yeah, whatever they need. Yep.
With the rebar in it.
With rebar.
The 3 rows, and your same thing with your electrical.
Yep. Same thing. And then post tension, I don't know if we see it much anymore. It's wild. Do you guys see much of that out here?
Someone has mentioned that we need to do it, and they crank
it.
What is it?
They crank it. They put a whole grid system together, and then they are cranking it down.
Like with threaded rod. So instead of a rebar, they use a threaded rod.
Yeah, and the thing that has always kept me away from it is, when you have to move things, when you have to, plumbing needs to be moved, something like that needs to be moved, on the way we're doing our footings and our stems and then having our slab, you're able to move plumbing around, break up the concrete, move plumbing, reconcrete it. If you ever have to move something on one of those and you have to cut some of that rebar, you're weakening the foundation.
Like you could ruin it.
You could end up ruining it if and you have to get an engineer involved. Can we cut this one? But there's no way of refixing it if you have to cut it to where on our footings and our stems, we have a little more play inside of the slab.
So a lot more risk, but what's the benefit? Why would I need to use a post tension?
I have no idea.
Bad soils? Or you maybe even pack it? It's got to be super tight.
Yeah, a real sandy, if you're on a super sandy lot that needs that you can't compact, that you can't put a footing. You can't put a footing down. You can't get the compaction rate to carry it. You end up doing post tension because it's in essence hovering. And you're using all that rebar.
Interesting. So those are some different types of.
Way different.
Yeah. Have you ever used CMU, which is a cementous block, as on top of your footings as the stem wall?
We have
or the cells solid. I wonder if there's a big cost difference because I've always known that poured walls are more expensive than a block.
Yeah.
But is that really the case? Because you got to do the block, you got to make sure the rebar comes through the cells, then you got to fill the cells. And, there are little tricks that the masons like to use. And that's, when they're in a hurry and nobody's watching, they'll take the bags when they're supposed to fill the cells, they'll take the bags of concrete and then they'll pour they'll mix up the concrete in the bags. that they have, they'll stuff in the cells. So the concrete only goes down so far, so they don't have to mix as many bags
Yeah.
to fill it solid, but then they've just compromised the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. And you know how you figure that out? I mean, I haven't seen it a lot on our jobs because I think we've only ever done one
Yeah.
CMU block wall, but we're going to do it coming up here. But we have done it on steps. And what you can notice is when they, for a little pro tip for our listeners, if you ever have a CMU block wall and it's supposed to have all the cells filled, make it a point to go out there. If you miss doing it during the day, you're working or something like that, go out there that night or the next morning. And what happens is it's cementous. It's a block. It's
Yeah.
cementous. The moisture gets out by going through the wall of the block. So you can look at the block, and if that whole block doesn't look like there's lines in it, these dark
Was
colored
filled?
lines, you can actually physically see where it's filling because it'll be wet. And then your dry block all the way down, you're like, hey, fool, you must have stuffed something right there because it's hollow right there.
It's hollow.
So
Yeah.
you can really call them out. So that's a pro tip on how to call out a
we've
mason
never-
for a bad job.
Yeah, we've never used it on our stem walls. I mean, obviously, I've used a lot of block for under fireplaces, or we use block for outdoor kitchens, but never on our stem walls. We're always doing poured wall.
Yeah, yeah. And, I know in Atlanta, the types of foundations we typically deal with, we'll get some slabs, monolithic, not a ton of I've never done a post tension, and we don't get a lot of stem walls. We either say, hey, we're either going to dig it for a basement and give you a Yankee basement,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you what a Yankee basement is in a second, but my brain, so remind me. Or we're gonna give build the site up like
Yeah.
you're talking about and give you a monolithic
Yeah.
slab, or but for the 85% of the time that I said earlier it's a foundation wall. It's your footing, like you talked about, engineered width, height, how many pieces of rebar,
Yep.
leave the rebar out hanging, and then we'll come in with a minimum of 9-foot basement wall. It all depends on the grade height,
Right.
and the change. 9 is kind of standard.
Mm-hmm.
Our standard is 10 foot
Mm-hmm.
because when you ever do decide to finish out your basement, we'll get into this in framing, but the different type of floor systems you use in your framing to hold the floors will dictate, your height in the basement. So if you're starting out with a 9-foot basement wall, you're going to and then you have a bunch of mechanicals in your basement, you want to finish it, you're going to wind up with areas that are only 8 foot tall.
That's right.
And so for the extra 1 foot, if your site can handle it, for the extra 1 foot of height to get the foundation to 10 foot is worth its weight in gold.
Oh, yeah.
So the pro tip is if you're going to do a 9-foot wall, spend the extra money and do a 10 foot. You will get that money back out of enjoyment and resaleability with your home when you want to sell it with a 10-foot tall basement instead of a 9.
That's
Pro tip. So make sure that that's a big thing. But we're doing 10-foot walls, and in 10-foot wall they got to be 10 inches thick.
Yep.
There's going to be a brick ledge to solidly support the brick going above, and that's usually a 4-inch ledge. We'll go a little, if we're going to do a full stone requires 5-inch.
Yep.
And so we'll actually make the foundation wall a little bit bigger so we can give them a 5-inch ledge. Some builders won't. They'll just stick with a 4. It's not bad, but we believe in making it total quality. And, so you never have cracking and things like that, or settling or movement of the brick because it's off of the foundation. But we'll pour that wall, and then it'll step down with the grade, to limit. Because I will tell you that one of the most expensive parts of a home is your foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And when you get into walls, depending on the height of the walls, it gets more and more expensive. So our listeners know that, a 9 and 10-foot wall requires the smallest size rebar for the most part, number 4, and a 10-inch thick wall. Sometimes if you don't have a brick ledge, you can get away with an 8-inch thick wall. Okay. But as you get higher, the wall with your height, like let's say you need a 12-foot foundation wall or 11-foot or 14-foot, the taller you get, the wider the wall has to get. So you go from a 10 to a 12.
Yeah.
And then your rebar goes from a 12-inch grid. Every 12 inches you have horizontal and vertical rebar to a 6-inch grid or an 8-inch grid. Again, the engineer will dictate that for your plan. But as you get taller, your rebar also, you have to shift to like a 5 a number 5 rebar,
yeah.
which is 3/4 inch in diameter, because that even your steel has to be more stouter, if that's a word. So we'll go with it, stouter. When I order a beer, I say, "Give me one of those stouters."
Yeah, I want one of the stouters of the stout.
Yeah, give me one of those Guinness stouters
Yeah,
back
I think
there.
that's right.
And so that's what we deal with the foundation for the most part, 85% of the time.
Yeah.
Monolithic slab, the other, 15% of the time on average. We love those because, like you said before, it maximizes potential square footage.
It does.
And for people that don't know, most homes are appraised by square footage.
Yep.
Hate to say it, but one of the little tricks we have to do if you're selling houses in Atlanta, if you've got a basement and you're trying to sell a house, if you're a spec builder, it means a builder building for sale. If you're putting in a foundation, finish it.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the finest finishes like your first and second floor, but get that finished square footage.
Oh, yeah.
And what it does is it drags down your price per square foot
Yep.
of your fancier on the upper.
Mm-hmm.
And so it attracts the realtor to say, oh, well, this house is only $550 per square
Yeah.
foot. Let's get that, hey, but this one's $750. Same finishes. The thing is they only finished the first and
Right.
second floor and did it real nice. This builder was smart and got a bunch of square footage in on the basement.
And plus, the basements are just awesome places, man. For multiple reasons, and when we build them, people end up loving them. But it's twofold for us. For my wife and I, we have 4 kids. Our basement that we had was the kids were down there. And we loved it. Instead of them being above us, they're down there. And so you're not hearing them trampling on everything. If you don't have kids or you have older kids or whatever and they're gone, the basement is the hangout zone. It's where you can watch games.
right.
It's where you can watch movies. It's just they're so awesome.
Yeah.
Like we just love getting to do them.
Well, what's interesting, and one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say this to the audience because they're from all over the country, is we're in southern climate zones. There's different zones, climate zones. Look at them in your area to see what your requirements
What
are.
zone is that?
5. I'm in 5.
Weird. I think we are too.
Yeah,
So
probably.
does that make us southern?
No, you're Midwest. Oklahoma's in the Midwest.
It's not.
Not quite Southwest, but yeah, not quite. Yeah. Anyway, but those northern climate zones, you've got to have a foundation.
Yes.
And that leads me to what I was saying before, a Yankee foundation. What's a Yankee foundation? Well, that's where the entire foundation is underground.
Yeah.
All 4 sides.
4 sides.
And you might have some egress, maybe a set of Bilko
Mhm.
steps down, or maybe a retaining wall,
window well.
a window wells, things like that. So in the South, we do have homeowners, believe it or not, that come from the North that say, no, I know I want the flat lot because one of the big things here now, all the rage in Atlanta and probably where you are is I want to be able to walk out of my kitchen, first floor, living room, family room space to my backyard level. And a lot of our lots don't dictate that.
So that's how.
But we also want the basement. They want a level lot so they can walk out to their pool and their front, but they also want a basement. So if their lot isn't perfectly flat and then just starts to dip off on the left or right, which is hard to find.
Yeah.
What
So
you say.
well, that's how we live. Main level walks out to the backyard. That's one of the tricks of a basement. But it's funny because where I've been selling on this and getting people excited, and it's the way Emily and I like to live. No, the basement is the fun zone. And we actually love that. Hey, main level, come into the garage. It's main level. You're overlooking the pool. And you keep the main level nice. The main level is nice. And when you're having a pool party, you got the basement doors open and people are coming in and out of the basement, dripping water in the basement, doing that rather than coming into your beautiful home. So I've been reverse pitching it because how we live today is you walk out of your back patio, you're in your backyard.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's really interesting. And so that Yankee, what we'll try to do here is if we have to do it, we'll build a giant window well. We'll do retaining walls, which again are even thicker than normal walls because you only have support on one side. So when you're doing a retaining wall, your footing is going to be much bigger than a standard footing. And so envision this, you walk out of your basement, you've got these exposed walls that are below grade, and then you have a set of steps up. That's a Yankee basement where we give them what's called egress.
Yeah.
And that means basically a fireman can get down there with his backpack on and get through a door or window that's of a certain size, minimum 9 square feet, to get into those locations to help get people out.
Yep.
So we try to get that egress in the basement in case there's ever a fire
Yep.
or someone decides to sleep down there. They can get out if there's a fire on the first floor. But those walls outside that Yankee basement are called retaining walls. You'll see those in your, you'll see those also when your topography is dropping to hold land back. Well, that's a whole different wall system.
Oh yeah, whole different.
Okay, that with your house framing or your house walls, you have framing on the inside, so your framing goes wall to wall, so it's holding it from that standpoint. So picture this in your mind. I'm going to take you all back on a little adventure. Let's go on an adventure together. So close your eyes and picture this, unless you're driving, or you could, and it'll be really fun. Is your dirt on the outside of your foundation wall? That dirt gets saturated with water.
Yep.
Water creates hydrostatic pressure and wants to push in. And you have that force pushing on the outside of the foundation constantly that's trying to constantly push that wall in. And on the inside, though, what counterbalances it is framing. You've got framing like your floor system that goes from foundation wall to foundation wall that's tied in and nailed down and screwed down and bolted down now. That's holding that framing not only on top of the wall, but it's helping push out. So you have that help. When you have a retaining wall outside, if you can envision that, you don't have that help on the other side. You just have water that gets saturated, that's heavy, that's pushing against that wall. So it wants to push that wall over. How do they counterbalance that, the engineer? Well, depending on the height of the wall, again, it dictates the thickness, but those tables, those wall tables and the engineering tables say those thicknesses get bigger faster with heights. And same with the rebar size inside those walls gets bigger faster. But more importantly, those footings get wider. There's what's called the toe side and the heel side. And in each one of those has to be a certain depth. So it's counterbalancing that pressure. So it's not pushing it over because you've got the counterbalance here. And so it's nothing that you do a 10-foot retaining wall or 12-foot retaining wall. Your footing could be 8 or 10 foot wide.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of 2 foot.
Yeah.
You're talking almost a full dump truck or concrete truck full 8 or 9 yards of concrete into some of these footings.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
So I digress. But that's another word. Thing about foundations and landscaping is the cost of a retaining wall is far more than per linear foot than a foundation wall. One of the other types of foundations that we have here is crawl space.
Okay.
Where we don't fill it back in with dirt. And that's for our homeowners that the lot might be 6 foot slope or 4 foot slope. I know here we have, if we're going to do a crawl space, we try to give them a minimum of 4 feet between the top of what we call the dust slab. What's a dust slab? Well, if you've got
I didn't ask.
Oh, so okay. May I tell you? I'll get into that in a second. But what basically is we're pouring up or blocking up a wall on the footing, but the inside gets all dug out. So it's all 4 foot deep. And then what that allows us to do is to frame the first floor. Some customers like that because it really hurts. If you work in the kitchen or work from home and you're on that concrete floor all day, that concrete subfloor, there's no give. The fibers in the wood of, in the deflection, meaning how the floor deflects when you walk on it with weight, actually provides cushion for your knees.
Interesting.
And so you will feel better at the end of the day if you spend a lot of time in that place, at home or wherever it is, if it's a floor system with wood than a slab.
That's interesting.
So some people want that and they'll pay the extra. We're talking 20, 30,000 extra to do that over a raised slab.
Yeah, we haven't used crawl spaces. Usually I come across crawl spaces on our older homes. World War II era homes that you go and do fix and flips on crawl spaces. Usually, but man, we've been doing slabs for so long.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about slabs because I think that's something that's really important to touch on as we kind of move towards, we talked about foundations. Let's talk about slabs, or like what you like to call the subfloor, the concrete floor, which is, basement floor, first floor, any place the garage floor is a slab.
Floor, your second.
Patios, this and that. But let's talk about under slab prep. Because that's a big thing. And it's something that, there's choices there to be made by homeowners. And we're going to give you best tips. if you've got, because listen, your foundation, it's only open once.
That's right.
So, and it's under your house. So you might as well, in my opinion, spend the money to do it right. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So in terms of under slab prep, what is it, walk us through the different layers.
So for us, we're going, so we're putting in our plumbing, we're putting in our HVAC.
So you backfill it first if there's any variations. You put in your plumbing.
Then put in your HVAC if we have in-ground HVAC.
Cool.
Okay, then we fill it with sand. Okay, then we're going to be putting a visqueen, a moisture barrier, plastic, if you will, to then cover the whole system. We cover everything with the visqueen, in essence, plastic, to keep a moisture barrier so it's not coming, because as you're saying, water's wanting to come up.
And you put the 50. Do you put 57 stone under the plastic? Like a layer of 57 stone, 4 inches or so? Is that a thing in Oklahoma?
No, what's 57 stone? Educate me.
Okay, so 57 stone is just the size.
Yeah.
It's, you could fit it in the palm of your hand. It's not like what you use for the driveway.
Yeah.
It's a smaller stone. It's like when you order concrete from a concrete truck, that's 57 stone in it as a standard.
No, sand.
Oh, okay. Is it because sand has so much the characteristics that allows water to drain out?
Yeah, it's allowing water.
So your sand, you prep it with sand,
Yes.
and that is in place of a 57 stone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's all sand for us. Fill sand.
Oh, okay.
Is how we're doing
And
it.
that's letting the moisture wick back down.
It's letting that, and I mean, it's supposed to, but it doesn't mean, but it still obviously wicks back up, which is why we're covering it with a plastic.
Gotcha.
Before we cover it. Then we're putting our rebar grid system over
that. 2 inches up or an inch and a half up.
Yeah,
so
we
it's
have
not
them on,
touching the plastic.
It's not touching the plastic. We actually have them on stands.
Gotcha.
Put them on little stands. Generally speaking, 4 foot by 4 foot. We've had some though that we've went, again, per the engineer. If we have a couple double stacked stems, we'll go 2 foot by 2 foot. On our grid systems, tie it all together, and pour the concrete.
Gotcha. And what that does, those stands keeps that rebar not quite halfway in your 4-inch slab.
That's right.
So it keeps it stronger because it's not pushed to the bottom.
Yep.
And then there's no strength in the center of that slab.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha. And so we're kind of the same way because we're on clay. So what we do is, we overdig we do the footings, we overdig the basement, the clay, or the Georgia dirt to get it out of there. And we'll go down about 6 inches. We do a little bit more than the 4, and I'll tell you why. So we go down about 6 inches below the top of the footing, because we want our slab, the concrete slab in the basement or in the first floor in the garage, to sit on top of the footings around the perimeter.
Yep.
So we got more support there. So we dig down 6 inches, and and the guys dig out their grade beams, which is the internal support. The slab, it's your monolithic, but in grade beams is like a monolithic pour, but inside your.
But it's inside. Same. We do the same, and it's called out on the plans where we're bringing.
Yes. So we get the grade down, then we get the plumbers in there to do all their things. We have never done underground because it's a basement. All your HVAC comes from above.
Yeah.
Right. But in a slab, we are about to do one where we've got to pipe, like you're saying, the HVAC under. In that case, what we're doing is we're going to put it in, we're getting 8-inch PVC and putting it on a slope underneath. So any water will drain back and out. So we're engineering that ourselves. It's kind of fun. But so we get all that slab prep in they call that slab plumbing.
Yep.
Any areas where we need to put conduit, which are just PVC runs under. So if you have a big open space in a room and you want to have
floor
plugs or something like that, outlets in the middle of the room, we put all of that in.
We're running conduit as well for island plugs, floor plugs, all those things. And then you're running it to a wall.
So again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier is in a previous episode, plan ahead of time.
Yeah, it's all planned ahead.
It got to be planned ahead so you can execute flawlessly, because you don't want to tear up your slab.
That's right.
And so we get all of that in, and then we come in with our, they do the grade beams again, clean them out. Then we do our stone. We do 6 inches of the 57 stone, which is a crushed granite.
Yeah.
And then what we do, because we have a lot of radon in the South. And so standard in our homes, I know builders don't do a standard. It should be standard, please. Listen to me. Please do your customers a huge favor and put radon piping under the slab while it's open. It's cheap. Do them a favor. So, and that's what we do. So we take that slab, we break it into the different areas, and we do the perforated pipe. A lot of times we'll drill it ourselves, and we'll embed that pipe in the 57 stone. So what happens is, and then those pipes come up out of the slab, and we just cap them from now. And then during the rough-in, which we get to in a later episode, the plumber will then take that. We label it. You got to label it, or else they'll mistake it for a drain pipe. But you label the pipe with your radon sticker, and then later the plumber will tie that all together and take it out of the roof. So what it's doing is it's pulling those noxious gases, radon, out of, because it gets up under your slab, and it needs a path of least resistance like water. That's why you do 6 inches of stone. Is you want the water to go down, not up through your concrete slab. And so what it does is it takes the radon gas up and out of the roof. And that's what's called a passive system. And then we'll get into an active system, but it's basically putting power and a fan in and a measuring device in your attic to suck, to make it an active system. So we do that under the slab while you got it open. It literally costs us $600 or $700 to do it, to get it out. And then the plumber will charge another $600,000-700,000 to take it out of the roof. It is the best insurance program you could ever imagine, especially if you go to sell a house. I don't know if you've ever seen a house where people have radon problems. You haven't probably seen it there.
No, I haven't.
In Georgia, you got a radon problem. They come into your basement after underneath your house and start drilling holes everywhere. And then they go the path. They can't take it through the house anymore and hide the pipe inside walls or in chases. They got to take it to the outside of the house. And so you got this big white ugly pipe with a big saucer looking fan mounted to the side of the house. Now that I told you what it is, listener, you're going to see it and you're never going to be able to unsee it.
That's
and
crazy.
It's awful. So you're saving yourself all hassle with an inspection later. So we do that. Then what we use as a visqueen product, we've decided years ago to switch to a commercial application. And so we use a product. Now I'm having a brainwave. Thanks. It's visqueen. Your standard visqueen is 6 mils, and that's how thick it is, 6 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. We use a product that's 15 mils. There's different products. We use a product called Stego. It's a bright yellow, it's a bright yellow limeish green color. Can't miss it. We roll that out over the top of the stone. Why is that? You don't have this issue where you are because you have sand, but where we have 57 stone, those have sharp edges. And you got your slab guys walking all over. It's poking through. So basically what you're doing is all your protection, you're now piercing it and allowing moisture to come through, radon gas to come through. So we use the Stego, which is, at least almost 3 times the thickness. And then around any pipe that comes out of the slab, around the entire perimeter, we're using the Stego tape as a special tape that seals it to the pipes. So we have absolutely sealed that foundation for moisture and everything else. And what we've heard over the years from customers, that if you use this Stego system and do your under slab protection right, your basement will not have that cold, clammy, damp feel or smell. Go down into somebody's basement. You can smell it. It will feel almost like your first floor where it's just a dry, it's uncanny how good a good under slab water moisture barrier system is if done right. And so we use the Stego system and we do it right and we inspect it. And so that goes down, and then we do the wire mesh. Or rebar if it's, in the grid pattern. And then we pour our concrete. And that gives a terrific system. In crawl spaces, we do what's called the dust cover. So we don't just leave dirt and do plastic over it, and that's what you get. We still do the stone, the visqueen or the Stego system. And then we do it just like a regular foundation, and we only pour 2 inches of concrete because nobody's ever going to use.
So the crawl spaces that we come across are just dirt.
Yeah, they're just dirt.
You
can do it. That's code. You can still just do dirt.
It's crazy. It's just dirt.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Insane.
Yeah.
So Whoa, that's under slab prep. We talked about radon piping. We talked about underground plumbing. What are some? We're landing this plane now on foundations.
Hope so.
Is there any? Yeah, sorry. Oh, on your outside slabs, your back porch slabs and stuff like that. You don't put plastic underneath it, or your garage slabs. Do you put plastic? I do the garage.
So we do the
inside.
We do the garage because we're doing the rest of the house. As of now, no, we're not doing it under patios.
Yeah, because it's open air.
Yeah,
yeah. So we don't either. We save our customer a little bit money.
Yeah, we save our customer money there. We will use rebar on driveways.
Yep.
So we'll
Or
use
wire mesh.
wire mesh, and especially driveways with slope. You know, we will use it. Sometimes our customers, because it's not code to use it, sometimes we have customers that don't want to spend the money on rebar, but we do on our extremely, sloped driveways. Sometimes we in essence are telling our customer, you're getting rebar here to make sure that we don't have problems.
That's right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll do the whole driveway with it.
Whole driveway. Yeah.
And sometimes just for extra, if we're concerned, you can actually order concrete with fiber mesh in the concrete, and that makes it even stronger.
Yes.
But you got to ask for it.
So almost all of our driveways have fiber mesh.
Okay,
in the
gotcha.
concrete.
Here you have to add. It's not a standard.
Well, it's not a standard either, but we are adding it on all of our driveways.
Gotcha, as a standard. Okay, so I feel like we've touched on everything. If I could say a top 3 takeaway for this is, number 1, pre-plan. Pre-plan where piping's going to go, where you want your basement or foundation to look like in the future, and make sure that is on the plan and you get conduit. 2, make sure you use a high quality vapor barrier in your foundation to limit to limit moisture and everything from coming up. And 3, install a radon system. That'd be my top 3. And then we did forget to talk about one thing, and that's foundation coating, waterproofing a foundation.
Yeah. So you'll probably have way more knowledge on that than us, because our basement guy takes it all the way through. They are coated. He coats it in. I don't know what yours is. It is this black. This black that is sprayed on. Yeah. That is sprayed on, and yes,
an elastomeric type of black emulsified.
Yes, it's
asphalt.
It looks like asphalt. That's exactly once it goes on. Yeah, it's a coating that goes on, and we are doing those on all of our. So you call them foundations. We're doing that on any of our basement houses.
Gotcha.
Any of our basement houses, and we even for a while, in place of a zip system, we're just putting up regular OSB and having that same product come and spray.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because that's it's a pricier product.
It is.
Now, what I would say to that is, because we do a lot with foundations, we have a lot of water issues here with the clay, is our listeners need to pay attention to that coating, because there's different levels of that coating. There's in Georgia, and probably a lot of other places in the South or in the North, wherever, there's a damp, it's trick of the words. Better be careful. There's damp proofing, which is way different than waterproofing.
Oh yeah.
So there are builders that'll do it's a damp proof system, which is basically has a guarantee of 1 to 5 years.
Oh no, we're using a waterproofing system.
Yeah. And so from a waterproofing standpoint, there's a 10-year system and a 30-year system. In our case, the difference between a 10-year and a 30, our standard is a 30-year system. Because why? You have your foundation open once. Yeah. And you get a 30-year warranty from the foundation coating company that's renewable to guarantee that it's protected. And you're not going to have leaks. And the difference is the mills, same thing with your plastic under the foundation. They're spraying that on, and they're doing it to a certain thickness. So a damp proofing is going to get you a real light coating, and good luck.
Yeah.
But you can get to a 60 mil in a 10-year and a 10-year 30. The difference between the 10 and the 30 is they'll come through and they'll put a fabric. It almost looks like it's like a fabric on one side. The other side looks like the old milk crates.
Oh, yeah.
Plastic and dimpled. That goes on the wall with the fabric side out. They start at the bottom. They work their way up, and it overlaps each level.
Yeah.
And what that does, water follows the path of least resistance.
Always.
If there's a pinhole, it will get in there and it will shoot out the other side like a squirt gun. So what this coating, so you've got your 60 mil coating, you've got this protective layer on top of it, and it's creating with the dimples a way for water to quickly get down to your footing, which then has a strip drain, or you could do a 4-inch perforated pipe with stone around it, pig in a blanket we call it, or the strip drain, which is an integrated system with this 30-year system, which takes that water out to daylight.
Right.
So you're creating a freeway for the water. Instead of just pushing the dirt back up against the foundation and hoping that your 10-year or your 5-year, keeps it out and no rocks pierced it in the backfill.
Right.
When they push the dirt against the foundation. So that's my thing about foundation coatings. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
So that's it?
That's it.
I think we should say more.
Now that they've crashed their car. Well, I think that's about it. I feel like we've told you everything that you could imagine about foundations, but we're here to answer your questions. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to DM us. We're just so thankful that you're out there listening to us, talking heads. And if you like the episode, please give us a review. We love reviews, and make it a 5-star. If not, keep it to yourself. No, but we love a review. And if you're not following us, please like and subscribe. We'd love to make sure that you're in the know of different ideas. And please stay tuned for our next episode on the House That Wisdom Built series. And we're looking forward to seeing you next time.